Yesterday's Ontario budget generated plenty of headlines about the major line items. Our Hubs editor were on the lookout for some of the specifics for their regions. What did they pick up on? Well, here to help us with that, Ontario Hubs Assistant Editor H.G. Watson. Welcome.
Hi.
Now, this government has been saying that the province has been open for business well before the budget. The North in particular has been struggling with jobs. Do they get any help from this budget?
A little bit of help. As you mentioned, throughout the budget, they talk a lot about cutting red tape, and that certainly comes up a lot. And one of the announcements that actually precedes the budget, but was included in this as well, was changes to the Northern Ontario Internship Program. So that used to be a program that was just for people that were in university or just about to come out of school. They've basically now opened that program to everybody. So it's for people that are underemployed or unemployed, for people that are trying to change job tracks. And this is something that they're hoping will bring more people to the North. And it specifically seems to be targeting people who are in skilled trades and the Indigenous community.
Now, when you talk about population growth, is that a problem already in the North?
Yes, and right now the North, there's actually a lot of jobs. There's been a lot of Northern communities are, really desperate to get people up to work in these skilled trades. Our Claude Sharma, he actually wrote a story just a few months ago about how in Sault Ste. Marie, they're really hoping that they can attract some of the laid-off GM workers in Oshawa up to work in some of the companies there. So there is definitely a demand and an interest in repopulation in the North.
One of the other things you were keeping a close eye on was Indigenous communities. Did they get any sort of commitments or help from this government in this budget?
Right. I mean, that's an interesting question. I think, again, our Indigenous Hubs editor, Haley Lewis, on Twitter yesterday, she pointed out, and I think it's accurate, having looked through the budget pretty closely now, it seems like there wasn't a lot of specific commitments to the Indigenous community. While they were mentioned in terms of a lot of the other commitments that were made, there wasn't anything specific, say, for youth suicide strategy, right, or a specific Indigenous housing strategy. So that, I think that a lot of people are more noticing the absences instead of what was actually offered. That said, we did find out in the budget that the province does plan on honoring some of the resource revenue sharing agreements, right, that have been put in place. As well, there were some changes that are coming in education.
Now, I want to bring this up. The NDP works very critical about the funding being allocated to the Ministry of Indigenous Affairs. Tell me about that, because there is the numbers can be a little skewed there in terms of what the funding was. So
one of the big stories that came out of the budget yesterday was that the budget for the Ministry of Indigenous Affairs had been halved. And that, if you look at the numbers, that is definitely the case. Now, if you dive a bit into what the budget actually says, reason it was at $146 million was because of one-time expenditure that the province had to make. Now, that base funding did actually drop. So the budget this year going into 2019-2020 is going to be about $74 million. So it's not an insignificant job, but we don't know if there's going to be any other expenditures like that that'll come up in the next fiscal year.
You had mentioned off the top a positive in terms of Indigenous Studies. Tell me about the curriculum there. What's the plans for that?
Yes. So last year, actually, the province had announced they were canceling a review of the Indigenous curriculum that is taught in Ontario high schools. And that was a big deal because the whole point of the review was to bring everything in line with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission recommendations. So in this budget, they have said that they are going to be proceeding with a review of the curriculum that's taught in high schools. It was not a lot of details on what that's going to include, whether that would include Indigenous languages being taught or what kind of history. So that's something we're going to be really looking for in the coming months. The other thing that I thought was really interesting is that they are going to be expanding a program that started at Dryden High School, which is basically where they have Indigenous mentors come to the high school and work with Indigenous students to help them graduate and to deal with any academic issues that they're having.
When it comes to Northern Ontario, were there any significant omissions or maybe disappointments that you saw in the budget?
I think for a lot of people, they were hoping that there was going to be an announcement about restoring passenger rail service to the North. And while the budget did mention, and there has been signals from the government that they are interested in this, what they talked about more was that there would be an ongoing review of the best way to serve the North. So the only specific announcement for the North in terms of transportation was that the 2 highways in the North are going to be expanded to 4 lanes, which of course, is not a bad thing if you're driving around a lot. But at the same time, I definitely think there was some disappointment that there wasn't something more concrete, especially given the massive transit announcement we just had a few days ago here in Toronto.
The Ring of Fire, obviously when you talk about the North, was there anything in there in the budget?
Again, you know, they're cutting the red tape, to borrow the jargon from the Progressive Conservatives. But there was nothing specific that has come out of that. I think we will likely see some announcements again in the coming months. The Far North Act, which the Conservatives have indicated they would like to repeal, they had that under public consultation and review that actually ended yesterday on Budget Day. So we couldn't really expect there to be an announcement around that. So it's something I would definitely look for in the next few months.
All right, it looks like a lot of wait and see for now.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you so much. That's H.G. Watson, our Ontario Assistant Hub Editor.
Thanks.
The Agenda with Steve Bacon is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.